Okay, knowledge transforms lives and wisdom uplifts the world, they say. But what if one idea could shift the way you think, lead, and live? Welcome to the Monday Morning Learning Podcast, where we explore insights that inspire, empower, and transform. It's an absolute pleasure to welcome my guest, Kota Shivakumar, to my podcast. Get ready for an insightful conversation. Kota, do you want to say anything before we dive in?
Good morning, Ravi, and good morning to everyone who's on the podcast. It's a great time, great season, complex time, a lot of thoughts, and I guess each of the thoughts would be driven by some power in a way that it is going to help us. So I look forward to this conversation, really, Ravi.
Great, Kota. So I'll start with an introduction for the audience, Kota. Kota comes from a rich background in HR consulting and leadership training. His work enriches an organization's culture, coaching leaders to drive performance and transformation. The competencies he brings to the table are HR strategy, talent transformation, and leadership development, and are instrumental in fostering an environment of continuous learning and organizational excellence. Kota has taken the roles of CHRO, HR head, general manager HR, and chief consultant in various corporates. He's done his MBA at the same alumni, at the same university that I also studied, Sri Satyasai Institute of Higher Learning, and also has an engineering degree from Osmania University. He's been doing regular training and consulting for various corporates, and the below compliment is just one that is received. So someone actually wrote this compliment on LinkedIn saying, Siva has extraordinary talent and deep expertise in HR consulting and management areas. He's a great trainer who can engage with groups extremely well and can do excellent programs for the employees to improve their soft skills and in turn contribute to the organization's overall productivity. Above all, he's a great guy to interact and work with. Kota, that's your introduction for my audience.
Thanks so much, Ravi, and thanks for, of course, a lot of gracious, nice words, and thanks for having me on this podcast. I have seen some of the podcasts and the kind of excellent opinions that have been voiced out here. I really appreciate you for your initiative.
Sure, Kota. At the Monday Morning Learning Podcast, we focus on fostering values-driven leadership by integrating emotional intelligence, ethics, and strategic thinking into decision making. We explore how HR can evolve into a true business enabler in this particular podcast with Kota, shaping a high-performance culture that aligns people, purpose, and strategy. So there are three sub-themes, Kota. We'll be looking at strengthening leadership development, that's number one. HR strategy and culture is number two, and the spiritual and ethical leadership is number three. So let's dive into the first few questions for you under the theme strengthening leadership development, Kota.
Sure. In fact, as you know, Ravi, there's so much more awareness about this topic, this competence called emotional intelligence, which I always considered as a foundation competence. That's what I would say, foundation competence for leadership. Everything we see as a superstructure is seen by people around, your communication, your sense of authority, personal influence, and so on. But emotional intelligence is something that like a foundation that cannot be seen so easily. It's not visible as such. But I will tell you, this is what keeps the superstructure going and then really tall. Therefore, we need to discuss a little bit about it. See, in the first place, I would go to the extent of saying that anyone who has a fair degree of emotional intelligence can be called a leader in whatever they are doing. I want to start that way. The simple reason is that because they stand out of the crowd, Ravi. You take a set of students, for example, there's a lot of noise or there's a lot of reactiveness, restlessness in the students about anything, for example. One person stands out and then he seems to be more observant and then more calm. You would want to say that you would want to make him a leader. Isn't it true? Now, this is the same everywhere. So it is not necessarily about authority or position. It is about something that is very different in you as compared to others in terms of the way you respond to the world. So this is the very first point that we want to say. Of course, here introducing a term that Daniel Goleman, who's considered the evangelist of emotional intelligence in a big way, the very first sub-competency coined under emotional intelligence is self-awareness, as you know.
Yeah.
So our journey starts from there. And truly speaking, this is easier said than done for most of us. That's what my experience tells me. retaining our self-awareness in easier situations, of course, can be easier. Retaining our self-awareness when we hear out something that makes us conscious for a while is easier. Sustaining the self-awareness in crucial situations is the complex difficulty. Right. And you and I know that most of the times leaders are pulled into complex situations on a daily basis because you're dealing with people. And, in the interpersonal realm and the domain is where actually our real problems come up. If we can put it, a computer out there and then a mobile out there, a device out there doesn't trouble you as much. Occasionally it does trouble, but it doesn't trouble you as much as your relationships and in the way you equate with people. I'm not saying people around you are difficult. The difficult people sometimes could be us. The point is that there is something about the nature of interpersonal relationships that makes it complex, right? And therefore, Dale Goleman has given a framework where he gave a caveat, I would say, where he said that before you venture out into the domain of interpersonal, just look a little bit into the personal and do something here that enables you to become so strong to handle the interpersonal. So that's pretty much akin to the private victory and the public victory domains of Covey. Very, very similar to that concept. There he talks about habits, and here he talks about certain competencies. Okay, that's the thing. So self-awareness is what I feel that most leaders need to get, because understanding the trigger, Ravi, you are in the same team situations, you are in the same decision-making situations in a team. And the so-called, when we call ourselves leaders, the same troublesome triggers keep triggering us, no end. And people lose their cool. And then people, once they lose their cool, they go on a different path with respect to decision making. They might easily trip. Okay. So the strengths of the leader are undermined because of the lack of awareness. That's what I want to say. They're undermined. What I'm otherwise good at, I'm unable to really bring it out and then make use of it for the simple reason that my awareness is taking me on a ride. And therefore, the other thing that happens is that I'm not also really aware of my blind spots. The point is, so you worked in the corporates, and you know that, it's all about meetings, probably 40% meetings, 60, I don't know what if the other, sometimes as you go up the ladder, it is 80% meetings, 20. So what are meetings? Meetings are nothing but people getting together to exchange views. And what is happening in this exchanging of views? It's just a matter of meetings, ideas coming together. And more often than not, you see that they don't come together. And everybody can feel differently. And so in this process, what happens is that watching out, being cautious about a blind spot in you, to not come to conclusions, to not come to judgments, to not come to inactive listening, or getting into blocks of listening, etc., are very vital, crucial. But these are fundamentals. Probably they have to be, these things have to be taught to us in schools, where they tell us how to actively listen. But believe me, where in our curriculum have we learned active listening, Ravi? So did somebody teach us how to actively listen? They said they just made us sit and then reeled out tons and tons of some knowledge, information rather, which we are supposed to somehow imbibe and grasp and then vomit it out on papers. So if you went through a very deep education system, elongated education system like this, we are practicing actually lack of listening rather than listening. That's my concern. We are actually teaching people how not to listen in schools. Then after 20, 25 years, they come out and join corporates. They're excellent people, skill-wise, talent-wise, but there's no listening. Because it's like you have been told, if you are a star performer, your idea should count. And then therefore others are not as good. That's why they're in their positions. You have been chosen to be a leader because there is something. Now we forget the simple thing that you could be good in something, but there could be other areas where we are not as good as others. We forget these very simple aspects, and then we start thinking we are on the top of the world, and therefore blind spots are not seen, Ravi. Therefore, I feel self-awareness is one important point that addresses all these things. Now, how do we do it? Just as an action point, I want to add this. I'm sure that could be useful for us to discuss rather than just talking about a problem. The solution focus is that I think this a lot of people do, and I'm sure you are one of them, Ravi. Our association goes back to 2 decades at least, and I've always seen you to be when you speak, you are very measured in your speech. You're calm, trying to observe. And I therefore feel that very innately you have a good amount of EQ. That's what I understand out of my experience. Now how I wish that I imbibe some of that in my own behavior is always is what I felt always. Therefore, how does somebody develop it if they want to develop it? I would suggest a couple of things, Ravi. One is a daily reflection is a very important thing. Daily reflection is very important. Wherever we put that, even in a very busy work day, a leader can always have a little bit of reflection time in the morning, in the afternoon, during lunch hour, and then at the end of the day, for example. Similarly, don't end it only with your work day. Go back home, and then probably before you sleep, you could do a little bit of reflection to see how your behaviors have been with your family and then other social people who matter, stakeholders. So I guess it's all about reflection. And what do you do in a reflection? Just go back neutrally, objectively. Now that you are not in the same emotion as when you're going through it, try to create that picture in your mind and then see if this is what you would have liked anybody doing to you, and therefore would you want it to be slightly different. You can always if you feel that that's still okay, that's okay. We are not trying to really preach that your behaviors need to change, but we are just trying to say that your reflection is the best judge. Self-judgment is the best judge. Even some other person says one small thing, we won't be able to take it, but self-judgment still we are okay. So to that extent, that is what I'm saying. The second technique I would say, request all of us to do, which I do regularly, is journaling. Reflection I do occasionally, but journaling I do very regularly. I made it a practice. The best way to do journaling is make it a habit. How do we make anything a new habit? I'm 40, I'm 45. How do I make a new habit of journaling? The best way is to tie it up with an existing habit. For example, you have a cup of coffee, you really relish your coffee after you brush your teeth, and then you go through the headlines of the newspaper, for example. And then that could be a time that you tie up your journaling with your having a cup of coffee. And you see that it becomes easy. You won't miss it because you won't miss your cup of coffee. so and then the second thing is that keep the journaling, the journal handy, with a pen by the side where you sit and have your coffee. So these are some very simple things by which you will be able to get into this wonderful habit called journaling. What does journaling do? Journaling again is like a little bit of like reflection, but there is a power in the way you write down, Ravi. What I've seen is that thoughts go very fast. When you reflect also, thoughts tend to jump from one to other. You tend to dilute some thoughts and you tend to jump to again what you want, etc., etc. You do fast forward very fast and really so. But journaling, writing, since it is slow, it tends to slow down your thinking a little bit. That's the key advantage of journaling. Second thing is reflection doesn't allow you in future to go back and then check how you reflected, but journaling allows you to go back and see how you reflected, how you really journaled. So these are some things. I found it really effective. In fact, probably this is not the personal issue that I had in terms of a competence that I wanted to develop. I used journaling very powerfully to turn around my thing, and it started helping me in developing a new quality, which I wanted badly for a long time. I didn't get it, but it helped me because of journaling. That much I can say. So journaling can enhance self-awareness. Yeah. So there are other things. I can talk about a little bit of feedback, but I'll stop here because I'm going on. Probably you have something else on mind. I'll stop here for a
while. I think I'm loving this, Kota. The thing is, you're not just giving us insights, but you're giving us actionable insights with tools as well, with detailed explanation and something which you already experimented and being successful at. Yes. I think that's something which will be very, very useful for the audience, Kota. So I really appreciate the way you are actually packaging the entire answer.
Would you want me to add one more aspect that leaders can pick up? I think, we all talk about 360-degree feedback. Appraisal systems have been there. The customization for Indian environment, because most of these things have come from the West. We have not, most companies, I don't think, have been very successful in implementing them very well. I'm not judging, but this is just my observation as a HR person as I've gone through for various reasons, because they're culturally tied up. Now the point is, for a leader, however, having a 360-degree feedback is very important. I try to practice something with my teams on a regular basis, as when I was heading HR, which I'll share with you. Sure. I used to do, it was not my own technique. I picked it up somewhere from some very good article, and then I practiced it, which is called a 3x15 technique. Every month, I used to do this 3x15 technique where I had 3 questions to ask of my subordinates and peers, and I would give them 15 minutes for this.